Hello everyone tonight. We are stepping into the soot-stained world of 1840, where the clang of iron is your alarm clock and the smell of coal smoke is your morning perfume. You're not waking up in a soft bed. You're shuffling out from a splintery cot in a drafty loft above the forge. The ceiling is so low you can feel yesterday's heat still clinging to the rafters and maybe a mouse or two watching you from the corner. You are an apprentice blacksmith in a small English village during the height of the Industrial Revolution, which, despite the name, doesn't involve much actual revolution for you. Mostly it means longer hours, cheaper tools and bosses who have read one newspaper article about steam engines and now think they're engineers. Your breath puffs white in the cold morning air as you slide down the ladder. The forge is dark quiet and oddly holy before the fire starts. There's a peculiar stillness to this part of the day, like the world hasn't fully booted up yet. Outside, the fog is thick enough to swallow entire houses. You step out and immediately regret not finding your second boot. The ground is cold enough to numb toes and hard enough to crack a tooth. You cross the yard to fetch water bucket clanking against your leg. The pump handle is frozen solid. You slap it with a half-hearted curse and finally coax out a reluctant trickle. Back inside, you set the kettle over yesterday's embers, coaxing flame like you're bribing a dragon. The master isn't up yet. Old Briggs, with his stiff hip and beard full of yesterday's lunch, will appear soon enough, grumbling about your posture and mumbling about iron spirits that live in the coals. You've learned to nod like you believe him. It keeps the day moving. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere chilly tonight, comment where you are and what time it is. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You lay out the tools in a slow, sleepy rhythm. Hammer, tongs, rasp, file. Each one is worn in places that match your own hands now. There's comfort in that. Familiarity. Even if they've left you with more scars than most of your relatives. There's a small window above the bench. It doesn't show much, just mist soot and one very confused chicken pecking at a horseshoe nail. But that's your sunrise. You hear the upstairs floorboards creak. Briggs is up, and he's humming, which means either he's in a good mood or he found an extra pint behind the cabbage barrel again. He shuffles down hair like a bird's nest and apron already streaked with old grime. "You stoked her yet?" he asks, nodding at the hearth. "Not yet," you say, even though you've already lit the kindling. You hand him a mug of something hot, possibly tea, possibly just hot water with the ghost of tea in it. Briggs grunts approval. "Don't let the fire see you hesitate," he mutters. Iron remembers fear. Historians still debate whether blacksmiths truly believed iron could sense human emotion. Some say it was metaphor. Others claim it was just something they told apprentices to keep them focused. But standing there watching the coals blink awake like reptile eyes, you're not entirely convinced it's nonsense. You sweep the floor while Briggs checks the order list, scratching his head with a pair of calipers. There's a broken ploughshare, 3 pairs of shoes for Farmer Galloway's mule, and a mysterious hinge situation from the butcher that no one's willing to elaborate on. A rooster crows somewhere in the distance. Or possibly just gives up halfway. You can relate. It's almost time to open the doors and let the cold air slap your cheeks into full awareness. But for now, there's this odd moment between night and day, between warm and cold, where the forge feels like your entire world. A world made of metal ash and stories told through burns and bruises. You hear a knock, soft, polite, out of place. You open the door to find a boy holding a note with his teeth, both hands cradling a bundle wrapped in burlap. He drops the note at your feet, salutes for no reason, and scurries off like he owes the weather money. You read it. It's from the baker. His oven hinge snapped again. "Emergency repair, please." You sigh, knowing this means at least one free loaf if you play your cards right. You grab the bundle still warm and set it on the work table. It's the broken hinge, and it smells like cinnamon and soot. A weird combination, but not the worst thing to start your day with. Outside, you hear carts begin to rattle over cobblestones. The village is waking up. You stretch your arms, rotate your shoulders, and step toward the forge. It's time. You raise your hammer for the first swing of the day and pause. Not out of hesitation, just reverence. Then clang. Sparks fly and the world begins. Briggs claps his hands together like he's trying to wake up his knuckles. Right then, he mutters, "Let's see if this hinge wants to behave." You nod already, working the bellows, coaxing the fire from orange to white hot. The heat licks your face like a loyal but slightly deranged dog. The metal squeals as it enters the forge, protesting its change of state. You feel it in your bones that shift from cold and rigid to glowing and obedient. It's one of the few transformations in your life that makes sense. You control this. You shape this. Unlike the price of coal, or Briggs's moods, or your own future. Briggs leans over the workbench. Remember what I said about baker hinges? You don't, but you nod anyway. They lie. It's never the hinge, it's always the baker. He chuckles, then frowns. Still, fix it like it matters. Bread's more sacred than sermons these days. The morning settles into a rhythm. Heat, hammer, cool. Shape, twist, temper. You and Briggs don't speak much, words get lost in the clamour, but there's a kind of music in your shared movements, like a blacksmith's duet. One clangs, the other flips the iron. One adjusts the coals, the other preps the water barrel. It's almost graceful, if you squint. As your hands find the groove of repetition, Briggs starts humming again. This time, it's a strange tune, half hymn, half pub song. Something about a donkey, a wheel, and 3 barrels of ale. The lyrics are vague, possibly scandalous, possibly nonsense. He breaks off mid-verse. Did I ever tell you about the man who tried to forge a sword from lightning? You blink? No. He stood on a hill during a storm. Briggs says, eyes gleaming. Held a copper rod in one hand, a crucible in the other. Thought he could catch the bolt straight into molten steel. Didn't work, obviously. Turned his boots to vapour and his beard into dust. But historians still debate whether he died a fool or a genius. You can't help but smile. That's the kind of story the Forge invites, wild, half-true and utterly ridiculous. The kind that makes your arms ache a little less. The door creaks open, letting in a blast of sharp air, and one of the village boys, Benji, with soot on his cheeks and hay in his hair. He's 12 loud, and currently pretending to be your apprentice's apprentice. Message from Farmer Galloway. He shouts, holding up a bundle wrapped in what appears to be his own shirt. One mule threw a shoe, the other threw a tantrum. Which one needs the work, you ask? Both. Of course. You set aside the half-finished hinge and prep the anvil for horseshoes. Briggs mutters something about iron gods having terrible timing and goes to fetch the shoe molds. You begin heating the blanks, glancing at Benji, who's now poking around the tool rack like he's searching for buried treasure. You touch anything sharp, and you're explaining it to your mother. Briggs warns without looking up. Benji freezes. I wasn't touching, I was admiring. Admire from a distance, like a statue or a noblewoman. You snort, one joke down, you get the shoes shaped and laid out to cool while Benji runs off to deliver the news, probably adding his own dramatic flair about melted anvils and talking hammers. There's a moment of calm. Just you, Briggs, and the forge breathing slowly together. The fire crackles. The coals shift. A crow outside complains about something you'll never understand. Then Briggs says, "You know, in Japan, they've got smiths who fold the same steel hundreds of times." You nod. Heard that. Doesn't make sense. Steel's steel. You fold it too many times, it forgets what it's for. Or maybe it remembers more than we do. Briggs squints at you. That's dangerously close to poetry. You feeling all right? You shrug. Maybe you are. Maybe the rhythm of hammer and fire has made you philosophical. Or maybe you're just sleep-deprived and slightly hypnotized by glowing metal. By now, the fire has warmed the whole forge. You've peeled off one layer of wool and still sweat trickles down your spine. There's a smell in the air, burnt leather, hot iron, and something sweet you can't place. Could be the bakery next door. Could be Benji's imagination catching fire. The door swings open again. This time, it's Elsie from the apothecary here to collect a repaired iron scale. She's sharp-eyed and smells like rosemary and ink. You like her. She always pays on time. Still breathing in here, she jokes. Barely Briggs replies. But the forge hasn't eaten him yet, nodding at you. She examines the scale, tests its balance, then gives a satisfied nod. Looks good. Unlike the town council's finances, they've gone full collapse. You raise an eyebrow. Again, always. Briggs leans in, conspiratorial. She says that every week. We think it's part of her religion. She smirks, tosses a coin onto the workbench, and disappears with a wave. The hinge, the shoes, and the scale, all by mid-morning. Your hands are already red. Your sleeves are black. And your stomach has begun plotting rebellion. Briggs catches the look. You hungry? I could eat a brick. There's one under the bench. Got soot and everything. You both laugh. 2 jokes down. He throws you a half loaf from the bakery. It's tougher than last week's, but still edible, barely. You sit on a stool, flexing your fingers, watching the fire dance. In this moment, it doesn't matter that the world is changing faster, louder, more mechanized by the day. Machines are marching into every town, but for now in this forge, the work still belongs to hands and heat, and to the stubborn rhythm of men who refuse to let the fire die. The afternoon begins not with a bell, but with a hiss, the sound of a red-hot horseshoe plunging into the water barrel. Steam erupts upward like a ghost escaping from a pot, and you feel droplets cling to your face, gritty and warm. Briggs wipes his brow with a sleeve that only makes things worse and mutters, "Well, that's 3 down, 1 mule to go." The day's pace has officially shifted from calm to chaotic. You grab the next blank and thrust it into the heart of the fire. The forge roars more alive now, like it's tasting the urgency in the air. A bead of sweat rolls down your temple and lands right in your eye. You curse inwardly PG-13 style and squint through the blur. This is the part of the day where the forge stops being poetic and starts being petty. Briggs passes behind you with a pair of tongs and a chunk of glowing iron. You know what the problem with mules is, he asks. They kick. They remember. He grins and keeps walking, and you're not entirely sure he's wrong. Outside, hooves clatter. Farmer Galloway is back pulling the mule himself. The animal does in fact look like it remembers something it didn't enjoy. Its eyes are wide, its ears pinned, and its left front hoof is lifting just enough to say, "Try it." "I dare you. You keep a polite distance." Briggs grabs a leather halter and mutters a few ancient blacksmith incantations. Mostly curses and animal-related threats, then begins inspecting the hoof. "Split," he confirms. "Could be worse. Could be the cart axle again." You prep the shoe, checking it for fit and balance. It's odd how something so simple can dictate the mood of a beast and the fate of a day. One bad shoe and you've got a cart in a ditch, a farmer in tears, and a mule with an attitude. You glance at the clock. It's not even midday. The next half hour is a blur of heat, hoof scraping, and close calls with the mule's back leg. By some miracle and possibly divine intervention, you manage to nail the shoe in place without catching a kick to the ribs. "Not bad," Briggs says. "I think she likes you." You stare at the mule. The mule does not like you. Galloway tips his cap and lumbers off, mule in tow. Briggs returns to the forge and slaps a horseshoe mould on the bench. "Let's do 2 more. While we've got momentum." You sigh. "Momentum or masochism?" He laughs. Bit of both. As you reset the tools, a familiar rhythm returns. Clang, turn, tap, sizzle. It's hypnotic, almost meditative. In this rhythm you find peace. You find presence. There's no time to worry about the price of grain or the fact that you haven't written home in 3 months. There's only the metal in front of you and the hammer in your hand. Historians still debate whether the physical demands of blacksmithing created a kind of accidental mindfulness. Some argue it was just exhaustion, not enlightenment. But there's no denying the strange clarity that comes from repeating the same motion for hours, guided by instinct and callous. A thud breaks the trance. The door flies open and in walks Marjorie with a sack over her shoulder and a story in her eyes. She's older than Briggs, louder than thunder, and never, ever pays full price. "My wheelbarrow," she says, like it's an accusation. Briggs squints. "What about it?" "It snapped in half, right in the middle of the street. I was carrying beets." "Beets?" You gesture toward the sack. "And the beets survived." She gives you a look that could curdle milk. "No, I'm bringing you turnips." "Payment, in kind, like the old ways." You peek into the sack. Yep, definitely turnips, some with character. Briggs mutters, "We're not a grocery." But she's already dumping the broken axle on the floor. It lands with a clunk and a puff of sawdust. The wheel is cracked, the pins are bent, and one edge is coated in a substance you choose not to investigate too closely. You take the pieces to the bench and begin your forensic reconstruction. Marjorie hovers arms crossed, judging your craftsmanship with the intensity of a mother watching her child butcher a violin recital. "You remember the last one you fixed?" she asks. You nod. "Held for 3 months." "Exactly. This time I want 6. Briggs coughs. "We make no warranties." "Don't sass me, Briggs. I once saw you cry over a soup spoon. You try not to laugh." Third joke. As you sand the edges of the axle and begin reshaping the metal pins, your hands fall back into the rhythm. You realize how many small things you've learned that no one ever formally taught: the sound of a bad weld, the temperature at which iron starts to lie to you, the exact pressure to hold a rivet before it snaps. It's knowledge passed through burn scars and barked orders. Ancient and practical. The kind of thing you don't find in books, only in blisters. Marjorie eventually leaves, leaving behind a slightly better wheelbarrow and a dozen root vegetables you're not quite sure how to cook. Briggs pockets one and grins. "Turnip stew tonight." You grunt. "If you say iron rich, I'm leaving." He shrugs. "Your loss. Scurvy's still real, you know." Outside, the clouds have thickened. There's a chance of rain, or maybe just more soot falling from the sky. It's hard to tell these days. You wipe your hands and stare into the forge, now quiet again, the heat humming just below the surface. A few embers rise lazily like fireflies that never got the hang of flying. This moment between customers, between swings of the hammer, is the one you cherish. It's not glorious, it's not heroic, but it's honest. And for a few seconds, it's just you and the fire, breathing in sync. The calm doesn't last. Just as you're about to settle back onto your stool, the door creaks open again tentatively. This time, like whoever's behind it, is trying not to disturb something sacred. Or maybe they're just scared of Briggs, which, to be fair, is a reasonable concern. You glance up to see a familiar figure in the doorway. It's Mrs. Elspeth Hawthorne, the widow with the best garden in the village and the worst luck with anything that rolls. She's got her shawl pulled tight, her hair braided neatly like always, but there's a tension in her jaw you don't like. She steps inside, clutching something long and wooden. "Afternoon," she says softly, nodding at both of you. "I need a favour." You're already standing wiping your hands. "What's the trouble?" She unwraps the cloth from what turns out to be the axle of her garden cart. It's cracked straight through the centre, splintered, twisted and trailing what looks like soil-dried herbs and possibly a bit of last week's onion. Briggs whistles low. "You run it off a cliff." She shakes her head. "Hit a stone on the hill behind the church. I was bringing rosemary to the apothecary. Cart caught it, twisted, snapped. Nearly took me down with it." She sets it on the bench. You can already tell it's not going to be an easy fix. The iron band's warp to the pin is sheared clean off and the whole thing smells faintly of sage and grief. You glance at her again. Really look this time. There's more in her eyes than just frustration. The kind of heaviness you recognize from the forge's slow burning quiet, unbearable if left alone too long. "I'll fix it," you say. Gently. "Might take a little while." She nods. "I've got time." She sits quietly near the corner of the workshop, shawl pulled close eyes, not really seeing anything. Briggs, sensing something deeper than wood and metal, retreats into the back with an excuse about sharpening something. You set to work. You strip the iron from the wood, Careful not to let splinters catch your fingers. You heat the band gently enough to reshape it without burning away the metal's memory. You trim the axle, sanding the rough edge, humming to yourself to fill the silence. The forge crackles softly in the background, like it's whispering encouragement. Elspeth, you say, after a while I can reinforce this, but it'll be heavier. Might need help pushing uphill. She smiles faintly. I'm used to uphill. You nod. Yeah, that tracks. As you bend the iron back into form, you think about how the cart is like people broken in motion always, while carrying something too heavy, almost never while resting. The way things snap just as you think you've made it through the worst. Maybe that's why some folks never stop moving. They're afraid of hearing the crack. Historians still debate whether the invention of reinforced steel for wheel axles during the Industrial Revolution came from trial and error, or if it was inspired by agricultural accidents like this one. Some say it was wartime necessity. Others suggest it was the widow makers of the countryside, heavy carts, muddy hills, and too few hands to help. You finish straightening the band, letting it cool slowly while you prepare the new pin. It's a small piece easy to overlook, but it's what holds everything together, like most important things unnoticed until missing. While you work, Elspeth finally speaks again. He built that cart, you know, with his own hands. You glance at her. She's staring at the forge now, eyes distant. Jonas, she continues, wouldn't let me use the shopkeepers. Said it wasn't made with love. I used to laugh at that. Now I see what he meant. You say nothing, just keep shaping the pin. Do you believe things remember? She asks suddenly. Like objects. You pause. The question echoes something Briggs said earlier about iron spirits. You want to say no, but the longer you work with fire and steel, the more unsure you become. I think they remember how they were treated, you say at last. Maybe not the way we do, but in the way they behave when we pick them up again. She nods like that was the right answer. You finish the pin, slide it into place and test the axle's turn. Smooth, solid, the cart's not new, but it's ready. You hand it back to her. She runs her fingers over the metal as if reading it like Braille. Thank you, she says softly. This means more than I can say. Just doing the job, you reply. She looks you in the eyes. No, you did more. She leaves behind the sack of rosemary payment, she insists, and steps out into the fading afternoon cart and hand shawl, flapping like a flag in retreat. Briggs re-emerges from the back once the door closes. She all right? You shrug. Enough to keep going. He nods, picks up the rosemary, sniffs it, and immediately sneezes. Ugh, nature. You laugh. Fourth joke. You put away the tools, wipe down the bench. The scent of rosemary lingers, oddly comforting. The forge glows behind you, low and calm, like it understands what just happened. Not every fix is about iron. Sometimes it's about being seen, about having someone meet your brokenness with hands that don't flinch. You sit for a moment longer, letting the quiet return. In the forge, silence isn't empty, it's earned. By the time lunch rolls around, your stomach is making sounds that could pass for distant cannon fire. You've been up since before the rooster remembered he had a job, and all you've had to eat so far is half a turnip and a slice of crusty bread that could double as roof tile. You duck out back behind the forge with your meal, a wedge of cheese, half a biscuit, and something vaguely red that might have been an apple 2 weeks ago. You perch on an overturned bucket and stare at the horizon. Well, not so much a horizon as a smoke-stained row of rooftops, but it's something. Briggs joins you with a steaming tin mug in hand. Lunch, he says, holding it like a sacred chalice. What is it, you ask? Tea. What kind, brown? You both sip in silence. From down the lane, you hear a distant argument brewing. It sounds like two shopkeepers fighting over delivery schedules, but could just as easily be a lover's spat over cabbage. In this town, those are sometimes the same thing. Briggs picks at his biscuit. You know what the worst part of lunch is, he asks. You shake your head. It's never long enough to forget you have to keep working. You both laugh, but it's the kind that echoes a little too much truth. Fifth joke. To distract yourself from your jaw's protest against the biscuit, you ask the question that's been floating in your mind since morning. Briggs, what do you think about steam engines? He raises an eyebrow. That's an aggressive question for lunchtime. No, really, you think they'll take over everything? He leans back, eyes narrowing. Historians still debate that you know. Whether steam truly changed everything, or if it just made the mess louder, you chew on that. Both the idea and the biscuit. I heard they've got machines now that can punch out iron sheets in seconds, you say? Briggs nods. In the cities, sure. But machines don't care about a cart axle with sentimental value, or a mule with personality, or a widow with bad luck. People like us, we make things for people, not just for profit. You nod slowly. That sounds nice. But it also sounds like something people say when they can't afford steam engines. Benji reappears around the corner panting like he ran the whole way from the next county. You won't believe what I saw, he gasps, flopping onto the ground. Someone invent fire again. Briggs deadpans. No, better. There's a ghost horse in the woods behind the chapel. You and Briggs exchange a look. A ghost horse, you repeat? Benji nods vigorously. Old Martha says she saw it last night. Glowing eyes, floating hooves, steam coming from its nose like a kettle. That's just Farmer Dennis's old stallion, Briggs says. He's been sneaking into the brewer's trash again. Still, Benji says eyes wide it looked haunted. Martha swears it trotted through a gravestone. You file that one away under potential distractions from actual work. Did Martha also swear it offered her investment tips and vanished in a puff of lavender, Briggs asks? Benji narrows his eyes. You're just jealous you haven't seen it. You'd toss him half your cheese. Eat this before your ghost horse eats you. He takes it and grins, already chewing with his mouth open. Kids these days, loud, fearless, and built from biscuit crumbs and chaos. The bell in the town square rings once, signalling the top of the hour. Time to return to the heat. As you head back inside, you feel the shift in the forge. It's not just a room anymore. It's a rhythm, a pulse, a heartbeat you've plugged yourself into. The tools aren't just objects, they're extensions of you. And the fire, well, the fire doesn't just burn, it listens. Briggs is already arranging the next job, a rusted fence latch from the schoolyard that's been pinching fingers and egos for the past week. You're set to work, tapping, scraping, shaping. The rhythm returns. Clang, sizzle, tap, repeat. Somewhere in the back of your mind, the ghost horse trots lazily through your thoughts, leaving hoofprints in the soot. Briggs speaks without looking up. You know what I miss? What silence? The kind that doesn't come with expectations. You not understanding more than you'd like. There's a kind of silence in the forge. Thick, honest, but never empty. It carries weight like a wool coat in the rain. Heavy, but oddly comforting. I also miss clean fingernails, he adds. Sixth joke. You smirk and go back to work. By the time the latch is finished, your shoulders ache and your palms sting. But there's satisfaction in the shape of the thing. You made this. From nothing. With your hands, your fire, your sweat. That counts for something. Benji, now fully recovered from his ghost horse expedition, offers to deliver the latch to the school. You hand it to him, along with a warning, don't scare the children with stories about floating stallions. He winks. No promises. You watch him vanish down the road. Latch in one hand, biscuit in the other. Probably narrating his life like a bedtime story. You turn back to the forge where the fire waits. Still alive. Still hungry. And you still not done. The afternoon sun sinks lower, casting long orange bars across the forge walls like prison slats made of firelight. You've barely blinked, but the day's already worn you down to the bone, and it's not over yet. Briggs shuffles through a stack of bent nails and crumpled notes and groans. Constable's coming. You raise an eyebrow. What did you do? He shakes his head. Not me this time. He wants a lock. Custom job. Heavy. For his ledger drawer. You pause. Is he afraid someone's going to steal the town's accounting? Briggs leans in with a smirk. Rumour is the last ledger disappeared. right before they noticed a bunch of coal tacks went uncollected. You whistle low. That's dramatic. Briggs nods. He wants a lock that looks expensive and bites hard. The constable arrives not 10 minutes later, tall and rigid with a moustache that looks like it came with its own rank. His boots are polished, his coat is spotless, and he carries himself like a man who's never lifted anything heavier than a mug of ale. He lays the specifications out on the bench like they're sacred scrolls. Needs to be impossible to pick resistant to weather, and able to terrify an honest man into behaving. You squint at the drawings. So, you want it to be a metaphor. Briggs coughs loudly to cover your sarcasm. What my apprentice means is we'll make it sturdy. The constable sniffs. No apprentices. Confidential order. You handle it personally, Briggs. Briggs grins. We're the same brain, different hands. The constable doesn't laugh. No sense of humour, no soot under the nails, and probably no fun at dinner parties either. He leaves with an air of bureaucratic doom and promises to return before sundown tomorrow. You roll up your sleeves. That was pleasant. Could have been worse, Briggs mutters. Could have asked for a trapdoor. You spend the next hour forging the first components of the lock, a square-faced plate with 4 notches, each cut precisely like teeth that might actually bite. It's delicate work, even though the pieces are thick. Every file stroke matters. One mistake, and the mechanism sticks. There's something eerie about making a device designed to keep people out. You usually make things that help plows gates hinges, but a lock that's built for doubt. Mistrust in metal form. Historians still debate whether the rise of custom iron locks in the mid-1800s signalled a social shift toward paranoia or simply growing bureaucracy. You're starting to think it's both. While shaping the inner pin, you notice a detail. In the drawing, an odd symbol etched near the tumblers. It's not decorative, it's a mark, small and deliberate. You point it out. What's that? Briggs leans and squints. Looks like the mark on the old church bell. The one that cracked, the very one. You both fall quiet. Briggs shrugs. Not our business. We just make the metal sing. But you're already wondering what kind of secrets are being locked away and whether they deserve it. You file the final groove and place the plate aside to cool. The air smells like burnt oil and iron filings. You take a deep breath, letting the weight of the work settle into your bones. Apprentice Briggs says suddenly, "Ever wonder what we'd be doing if we weren't Smiths?" You glance at him. You mean if we weren't constantly covered in burns and making suspicious objects for shady constables? He grins. Exactly. You think for a moment. I'd be a baker. Sleep and smell good, never get yelled at by mules. You burn everything. Details. Briggs chuckles. 7th joke. I'd be a lighthouse keeper. Just oil, wind and books. You afraid of heights. I said dream job, not realistic job. You're both laughing when a shadow crosses the doorway. A figure stands there backlit by the late sun, face obscured. A moment passes before they step inside. It's Mrs. Merrow, the schoolmistress. Always stern, always serious, and always walking like she owns the cobblestones. "I heard you're making a lock for the constable," she says quietly. Briggs tenses just slightly. "We are." She sets a coin pouch on the counter. "Double whatever he's paying if you make a second key, and give it to me." The forge goes silent. Even the fire seems to pause. You look at Briggs. He looks at her. No one speaks. Finally he says, "Ma'am, we're Smiths, not spies." She nods. And yet, here we are. With that, she turns and walks out. You stare at the pouch, then at Briggs. He mutters, "We're going to need more tea." You're not sure what kind of scandal you just stepped into, but you know one thing. This lock is no longer just metal. It's a secret. And secrets in this village have long shadows. You continue working in silence, the weight of something unspoken settling into the corners of the forge. The lock clicks into shape. Each piece fits just a little too perfectly. Outside, the sun sinks lower. Inside, the fire burns brighter, as if it knows that something more than iron is being forged tonight. By now, the forge has turned into something else entirely less like a workplace, more like a cauldron. Heat coils in the corners. Shadows stretch long over soot-covered walls. You roll your shoulders and wipe the sweat from your brow with the same rag you've been using all day. Which, let's be honest, probably adds more grime than it removes. Briggs is bent over the nearly finished lock, squinting like a jeweler, muttering things like tolerance and clearance, and how the devil does this pin keep slipping. You meanwhile are working on something even more cursed inventory. You count nails like a monk counts beads. 12 square, 8 round, 4 bent, 17 mysteries. Briggs grunts. Check the tongs. I think someone's been sneaking off with them. You raise an eyebrow. Who steals tongs? Someone with terrible hobbies. You find 3 pairs where there should be 5. You check the scrap bin, the workbench, even under the coal bucket. Nothing. Then you remember you loaned one to Benji for his invention. Something about an automatic bread turner. You shake your head. We've created a monster. Briggs waves it off. If he invents a hammer that hammers itself, let me know. I'll retire. You take a seat on the stool legs, heavy palm saw. The kind of saw that isn't pain exactly, just the permanent echo of labour. The kind of saw that reminds you exist. Briggs speaks again, but softer this time. You ever think about what all this is worth? You glance around at the forge. In coins, none. In life. You pause. It's a strange question from a man who's spent decades in the rhythm of metal and fire. But maybe it's been building. Maybe today's strange parade of secrets, ghost horses, and double-commissioned locks stirred something deeper. I don't know, you say honestly. Some days it feels like we're just patching holes in sinking boats. He nods. But other days feels like we're building the boats themselves. That lands heavy between you. A pause, then a nod. Historians still debate whether tradesmen like us saw ourselves as craftsmen or just labourers, Briggs says. But I think we knew. Deep down. Every hinge, every nail, every bloody fence latch, it all meant something. Or it would have snapped in our hands. The fire pops behind you as if agreeing. Then snap. Your rasp breaks clean in half. You stare at it. That felt personal. Briggs snorts. The forge hears everything. You both dissolve into tired laughter. 8th joke. Possibly the best one yet. You dig through the tool chest, searching for the backup rasp, and instead find something far more insulting, your old wages book. Thin as a nail. You flip it open, scanning the past month's totals. 5 pence, 3 pence, 2.5 pence, plus a turnip. You close it quietly and shove it back in. It's not that you're bitter, not really. But there's a sting in seeing how little your effort adds up to, at least on paper. You've forged gates strong enough to outlive you. Reshaped wheels that carried families across counties. And in return, a roof that leaks and boots that don't. You look at your hands, burned, calloused, impossibly old for your age. They look like they belong to someone twice your years. And in some ways, maybe they do. The constable's lock is finally done. Briggs lifts it with a reverent grunt. It's a beautiful, terrible thing. Smooth edges, perfect weight. A mechanism so tight it clicks like a secret being sealed away. A lock that says, stay out, but also I'm hiding something. He sets it on the bench. You glance at the extra key you made hidden beneath a rag per the schoolmistress's bribe. It shines just as bright. You don't ask Briggs what he plans to do. He doesn't ask you either. Outside, dusk settles in. The sky turns violet at the edges, fading into soft grey where the rooftops blur. It's that time of day when the village breathes a little slower. Chimneys begin to puff. Children chase shadows. The baker's dog starts barking at ghosts. Inside, you start cleaning the forge. You oil the tongs, stack the blanks, sweep the metal shavings into a pile so fine it looks like powdered moonlight. There's a beauty to the quiet work at the end, a kind of ritual. Briggs lowers himself onto a crate with a grunt. You know, he says no one ever thanks a blacksmith. You look at him. That's because we make things they use, not things they look at. He smiles. Still, might be nice. Just once. Thank you for the gate that didn't collapse and crush my aunt. Something like that. You grin. I'll start a suggestion box. He chuckles, then grows quiet. You've come a long way. From the kid who couldn't tell iron from tin. You shrug. Still confuse them sometimes, just with more confidence. You put the broom away and pull the shutters closed one by one. The forge dims and the room begins to cool. You feel the sweat on your neck start to dry, leaving behind the sting of salt and effort. Before leaving, you place your hand on the anvil just for a moment. It's cold now, but not lifeless. It's never lifeless, and neither are you. The final light of the day spills across the forge floor, golden and fleeting, like it's trying to say goodbye without waking anyone up. You strike the match for the lantern and let it glow gently, not to fight the dark, but to soften it. The kind of light that knows its place. You're cleaning now, not because anyone told you to, but because this space deserves it. You sweep the last of the iron shavings into the corner stack, the coal neatly, and fold the rag that somehow managed to both clean your face and ruin it all day. Briggs moves slower than before. His shoulders slouch more. His gait has a tilt like a door on the wrong hinge. But he still hums tuneless and low. You've learned that when he hums at night, he's either thinking about his old dog or remembering someone he lost. He doesn't say which tonight. You oil the hinges on the main door. No one will notice it tomorrow, but you'll know. It's the kind of silent care that blacksmiths are best at. We fix the parts people don't even realize are broken. Briggs reaches into a tin by the windowsill and pulls out a single toffee, handing it to you like it's a medal. You earned this, he says. You look at it. Did you just bribe me with candy? No, he grins. I'm rewarding excellence in emotional labor. You both laugh. Ninth joke. Fitting. Outside, the world has slowed. The street's gone quiet. Somewhere in the distance, a dog howls, not mournfully, just bored. Chimneys puff like sleepy giants. The last cart rattles home iron wheels, murmuring across cobblestones. You sit on the threshold for a moment, lantern beside you. Not to rest, just to pause. This day has held everything. Fire and sweat, grief and gossip, ghost horses and government secrets. And through it all, you've held the line hammer in hand boots on soot spine slightly crooked, but spirit mostly intact. The forge behind you hums faintly, still warm. It'll stay that way through the night. Not because of magic, but because you left it that way. Intentionally. Lovingly. Like all things worth keeping. You reach into your pocket and pull out the extra key. It's small, innocent looking, but it carries weight. A weight you don't know how to hold yet. You stare at it for a moment longer, then slip it into a pouch and hang it on a nail by your cot. Not hidden, but not offered either. You've got time to decide. Before bed, you check the tools one last time. The hammer's chipped. The rasp is broken. The file's nearly smooth. And your hands blistered and proud. You are not perfect. Neither is the forge. But both of you are still standing. And that's something. Briggs has already gone upstairs muttering something about dreams filled with anvils and ale. You'll follow soon. But for now, you linger. Let the silence sit beside you. Let the day settle. You blow out the lantern. The room goes dark. And somewhere in the warm ash, a coal still glows. So, that was your day in the life of a blacksmith 1840. Not glamorous, not polished, but deeply human. The kind of day built from iron soot and 1,000 unspoken choices. And somehow, it still echoes like the tap of a hammer long after it stopped swinging. If you're still with me, maybe you felt it too, that rhythm. The way the day bent around the fire. The way your hands knew what to do even when your heart didn't. You weren't just shaping iron. You were shaping yourself. And maybe that's the secret the forge keeps. That in the heat under pressure with sweat on your brow and blisters on your palms, something beautiful takes form. Not perfect, not clean, but real, durable, enduring. Maybe you fix the axle for the widow not because anyone's watching, but because it matters. Maybe you make the second key because the world isn't black and white, it's fire and ash. And maybe you wake up tomorrow to do it all again. Not for glory, not for gold, but because in this little corner of the world, surrounded by the clang and hum of labour, you feel alive. Now slow your breath. Let the smoke fade. Let the coal cool. You are done for today. You are safe, you are whole. The forge will wait. Good night.